The story begins with a young girl named Koko, who heads to a stream to wash clothes using what appears to be magical water. A deer also drinks from the stream. When she gets out, the stream returns to normal. On her way back to the village, she spots a Pegasus carriage and eagerly rushes to see it, but a young man asks for her help first. Wanting to finish quickly, Koko skillfully cuts the fabric he needs, prompting the man to remark that her hands move almost like magic. Koko quickly disagrees, saying magic is far more precious, mysterious, and sparkly than that. Seeing how passionate she is, the young man asks why she loves magic so much. Koko excitedly recalls a childhood memory when she visited a festival at the castle and met a masked witch. The witch offered to sell her a magic picture book and demonstrated real magic right before her eyes. Completely fascinated, Koko bought both the picture book and a wand. However, when she told her mother about it, she didn't believe it. Her mother explains that only people born with magical power can become witches, while ordinary people can never use magic. Koko insists that the ground sparkles beneath her feet whenever she walks, so her mother jokingly tells her that if she can keep making it shine all the way home, then maybe she can use magic too. Unfortunately, Koko fails to do so. Back in the present, a loud crash suddenly echoes through the village. Everyone rushes outside and discovers that the Pegasus carriage has toppled over after a small boy crawls underneath it. While the passengers panic, the young man calmly steps forward, removes his hat, and introduces himself as the witch Kifri. Hearing that, Koko immediately offers her family's workshop for him to use. Kifri accepts, but tells her to stand guard outside so nobody peeks in while he works. Unfortunately, Koko's curiosity gets the better of her. She sneaks a glance inside and is shocked by what she sees. Instead of casting spells, Kifri is drawing. As soon as he finishes tracing the symbols, a pale blue light shines from the completed design. At that moment, Koko realizes that magic isn't cast at all. Instead, it's drawn. After Kifri repairs the carriage and leaves, Koko's mother is relieved that her daughter doesn't suddenly decide to follow him. She admits that after losing her own father to illness, she's terrified of losing Koko as well. Koko reassures her that she would never leave her behind. Later that night, mother and daughter retire to their rooms. Unable to stop thinking about what she witnessed, Koko takes out the pen that came with her magic picture book and begins drawing. At first, nothing happened. Then a drop of ink connects the circle she drew, causing the entire pattern to complete itself. A burst of light erupts, releasing tiny fireworks and leaving Koko stunned. Meanwhile, as Kifri camps nearby, he starts thinking about Koko's mention of the picture book. At the same time, Koko carefully copies one of the complex patterns from the book onto a sheet of parchment. The moment she completes it, Kifri suddenly bursts into the room and snatches her away at incredible speed. A second later, her entire house is instantly encased in ice, including her mother, who had stepped outside searching for her. Kifri reveals that Koko has unknowingly used forbidden magic. Desperate to save her mother, she struggles to break free, but Kifri stops her. Overcome with guilt, Koko blames herself for everything. However, Kifri tells her that she isn't at fault. The truth about magic was deliberately hidden to prevent tragedies like this. He explains that anyone can use magic with special ink and casting seals, and because Koko has now learned that secret, he is obligated to erase her memories. Hearing that, Koko desperately begs him not to do it. She fears that if her memories disappear, she will forget her mother too. She then reveals that she has already memorized every pattern inside the picture book. That statement immediately catches Kifri's attention. Realizing the book could lead them to whoever gave it to her, he asks if she remembers which page contained the spell. Koko replies that if she sees the same book again, she can identify the casting seal. With that, Kifri realizes there may still be a way to save her mother. He tells Koko that if she truly wants to help, she must keep the secret of magic forever. Once someone learns the truth, there is no going back. And from this moment onward, the only path left for her is to become a witch. Kifri and Koko travel aboard a Pegasus carriage on their way to Kifri's atelier, where Koko will begin her training as a witch. During the journey, Kifri explains that he planted guard briar seeds around Koko's house. Since her home was petrified by an unknown spell, the briars will quickly grow into a barrier that prevents anyone from getting too close. After arriving at the atelier, Koko meets Kifri's two female apprentices. Kifri then gives her the same uniform worn by his students before beginning her first lesson on the history of magic. He explains that long ago, magic was not something special. Anyone could use it as long as they knew the proper patterns and possessed specially made ink. However, that power repeatedly led to conflict. Because people could create nearly any spell they desired, countless dangerous forms of magic emerged. Eventually, the few magic users who still possessed a conscience united as witches. They erased people's memories of magic and entrusted its secrets only to disciples sworn to protect them. This event became known as the Day of the Pact. Since then, ordinary people have been led to believe that magic is a gift reserved only for a chosen few. Curious, Koko asks about forbidden magic. Kifri explains that forbidden magic consists of spells created during the Age of Conflict and outlawed after the Day of the Pact. Simply put, they are spells designed to affect people directly. Wanting to learn the difference between acceptable and forbidden spells, Koko asks him to teach her. Kifri takes her underground and explains that while there are countless forbidden spells, they all follow one simple rule. Any magic cast directly on the human body is strictly prohibited. This includes transformation, altering age, teleportation without doors or conveyances, manipulating thoughts or emotions, harming others, and even healing them. The only exception is memory erasure. Later, Kifri demonstrates a spell by adjusting several circular patterns around a window. Instantly, the scenery outside changes from rolling hills to a distant lake. He explains that the spell is called Window Way, a magic that connects two windows bearing identical patterns. He then points toward a distant structure known as the Tower of Tomes. Kifri explains that every book related to magic is automatically copied there the moment it is written. However, entry is restricted by a series of librarian trials. Only witches who overcome those challenges are allowed inside. Since Koko hopes to enter someday, she will need to study hard. But for now, she should focus on learning the gentler aspects of magic. Afterward, Kifri shows Koko to her room. Later, he is seen using a magical communication device to speak with someone. Meanwhile, Koko meets her roommate, Agat. Agat immediately expresses her doubts about Koko. She explains that apprentices spend years drawing casting seals until their fingernails turn black, working tirelessly to pass difficult examinations before being recognized as witches. Because of that, she refuses to believe an outsider like Koko deserves the same opportunity and demands that Koko prove herself. Before the argument can continue, Riche and Tatia arrive and announce that dinner is ready. After eating together, Koko heads to bed for the night. The following morning, Kifri begins teaching Koko how to identify the individual components of a spell. During practice, Koko accidentally draws a water-casting seal that sprays Agat with water. Agat quickly points out the mistakes in her design and corrects them. Seeing this, Kifri asks Agat to look after Koko while he travels to the Great Hall for the next few days. The moment he leaves, Agat turns toward Koko and declares that it is finally time for her to prove herself. Kifri arrives at the Great Hall, where a witch named Alara greets him. She remarks that it has been a long time since the Great Hall's former problem child last paid a visit. As they walk inside, Alara brings up Koko, mentioning that she may have a connection to the mysterious brimmed caps that Kifri has been searching for. Since no one has used forbidden magic in the last 4 years, Koko could be their most important lead yet. However, Kifri dismisses the idea. He points out that Koko has not even taken her apprentice examinations yet, making it a terrible time to involve her. Alara responds that the timing is actually perfect because the annual data range trial is currently underway. Kifri immediately refuses, saying he has no intention of putting someone as inexperienced as Koko through that test since it could easily get her killed. Meanwhile, Agat secretly prepares the trial. She explains to Koko that the first examination is called the Consent of the Crown. For the test, Koko may only bring 3 magical tools along with her components. Her objective is to reach the summit of the data range using only her own abilities and retrieve the rare diadem herb growing at the top. Agat gives her a guidance orb to show the correct path and a vapor bubble for drinking water. Noticing Agat's levitating shoes, Koko asks if she can borrow them as her third item. After a brief hesitation, Agat agrees and hands them over. Before sending her off, she warns Koko that this is her one and only chance. If she fails the trial, she will lose the right to become Kifri's apprentice and will have to leave the Atelier for good. Using the guidance orb, Koko makes her way through the forest until she finally reaches the Dada range. There, she discovers a massive collection of floating landmasses suspended high in the sky. Realizing she must use the flying shoes to ascend, she begins practicing. Unfortunately, she loses control almost immediately and plunges into a river below. The fall creates an even bigger problem. Her conjuring ink spills into the water, and the casting seals engraved on the soles of the shoes are completely washed away. Staring at the ruined shoes, Koko finds herself with no clear way to continue. Elsewhere, Tatia learns from Agat that Koko has already begun the trial. She quickly realizes how dangerous the situation is. The data range is higher than it has been in years, making it nearly impossible for a beginner to reach the summit even with flying shoes. Back at the mountain, Koko refuses to give up. She suddenly remembers the lessons her mother taught her while working with fabric, specifically how to draw perfectly straight lines with chalk. Inspired by that memory, she begins drawing casting seals onto a large red cloth she carries with her. To her surprise, the spell works. Using the enchanted cloth as a makeshift flying device, Koko repeatedly attempts to soar higher and higher. After countless failures and near falls, she finally reaches the summit and successfully picks the diadem herb. At that very moment, Kefri returns and discovers what Koko has done. Alarmed, he immediately opens a portal with the others to retrieve Koko. But when they arrive, they find her already standing there with the diadem herb in hand. Tatia rushes over and hugs Koko in relief. Proudly, Koko shows the herb to Agat as proof that she passed the trial. However, Agat simply turns around and walks away without saying a word. Afterward, Kefri sternly warns Koko never to attempt something so reckless again. Even so, he acknowledges her achievement and presents her with the official insignia of an apprentice witch. Koko proudly attaches the kit to her uniform, officially becoming Kefri's student. Finally, Kefri places a pointed witch's hat upon her head and tells her never to forget its weight. Koko practices drawing a fire sign, but the flames suddenly burst out of control. Tetia quickly extinguishes the fire with her vapor bubble spell and asks why Koko is so determined to master levitation magic. Koko explains that she ruined Agat's shoes and wants to repair them before returning them. Kefri suggests that Koko's pen might not be suitable for the spell and decides to take the group to the Magic Stationers, a special art supply shop stocked with all kinds of magical tools. Excited by the idea, Koko eagerly follows along. The group arrives in Kalhun, the township of the Marshwoods, and the closest witches' town to their Atelier. Koko is amazed to see so many witches gathered in one place. Meanwhile, Agat leaves on her own, insisting that she has things to do and has no intention of acting as Koko's tour guide. They soon visit the Starry Sword shop, where they meet Nolnoa, the owner of the Magic Stationers. Nolnoa proudly explains that every item in the shop is crafted by him and his grandson, Tarta. Nolnoa then shows Koko how conjuring ink is extracted from the rare silverwood tree, the only source of the precious material. He also shares an old legend about a silverwood tree that once fell in love with a witch, offering its blood as ink and its branches as wands. Just then, Koko spots the mysterious witch who gave her the picture book in the past. Without hesitation, she chases after the figure. Tatia and Riche pull Agat along as they rush to catch up with her. However, the group suddenly finds themselves in a strange place where both the floors and walls are made entirely of white stone. Realizing they are no longer in Kalin, they conclude that they have been transported through forbidden magic. The mysterious witch then appears alongside a massive dragon and declares that Koko is the one they seek, their only hope. Koko and the others immediately try to escape while Agat distracts the dragon with fire magic. Later, the group hides as Agat prepares a wall-breaking spell, but Koko interrupts her. Frustrated, Agat lashes out at Koko, blaming her for ruining everything, including the incident that turned her mother to stone. Riche eventually destroys the wall, allowing the girls to escape, but Koko is left behind. Elsewhere, Kefri continues searching for his students when he encounters Koko's brush buddy. The little creature leads him toward the last place where Koko and the others mysteriously vanished. Koko finally catches up with the others, only for everyone to realize they have returned to the exact spot where they broke through the wall. It becomes clear that they have been running in circles the entire time. Agat concludes that they need to find the caster seal behind the spell, and Koko reveals that she saw its location earlier. Now, the only problem left is how to get past the dragon guarding it. Instead of fighting the creature, Koko suggests using a gentler approach. Inspired by Titia's magic, she proposes creating a warm cloud bed to lure the dragon away while they erase the caster seals. Although hesitant at first, Agat agrees to Koko's plan. The group quickly works together and begins preparing their strategy. As Koko watches everyone draw perfect circles with ease, she starts practicing as well. After several attempts, she successfully conjures a pyreball spell. Seeing Koko's progress gives Agat the inspiration she needs. The group creates a giant sand cushion cloud bed large enough for the dragon. The plan works perfectly as the dragon eagerly settles onto the soft bed and quickly falls asleep. The girls rush toward the caster seal and begin erasing it, but the entire area suddenly starts crumbling around them. During the chaos, Agat slips from the stairs. Without her sylph shoes, she has no way to fly back up. Just as the awakened dragon prepares to devour her, Chifri arrives in time and summons a massive water dragon that completely overwhelms the beast. Meanwhile, Koko finds herself unconscious in a strange space with the mysterious witch. The witch claims that Koko is special and offers her a gift, promising to teach her things that Kefri never can. Koko later wakes up and finds herself safely back in Kaln with everyone else. Overwhelmed with guilt, she breaks into tears and apologizes for dragging everyone into danger. However, Chifrey reassures her after hearing the full story from Titia. He tells Koko that she was the one who saved everyone and reminds her that ideas are just as important to spellcasting as penmanship. Afterward, Chifrey quietly asks Noah to investigate the ingredients used in the unknown castor seal's ink. He also warns him not to inform Knight Morales about the incident. Noah initially refuses, but the serious look in Chifrey's eyes leaves him with little choice but to agree. Koko continues practicing her drawing skills, but quickly realizes that her lines are still shaky. After the incident in Colin, she has yet to find a pen that suits her, and the pigment stone she uses does not fit the small sheets of paper given to her. As she worries about her progress, drowsiness suddenly washes over her. She quickly snaps back to attention when she notices Chifrey sitting beside her. Koko nervously admits that at this rate, she might fail the test at the Tower of Tomes and never find the picture book she has been searching for. Chifrey takes her to the kitchen and asks her to create a pyre ball to help bake the carapace. Koko struggles to make a proper one, failing several times before finally succeeding. Chifrey then shares that water magic was the first type of magic he ever mastered. Ironically, he only learned it because he was a terrible swimmer and hated getting wet, so he practiced constantly to avoid washing duties. He explains that if someone wants to learn a skill quickly, the best approach is to make it part of their everyday life because there is no better teacher than life itself. Taking his own advice, Chifrey has Koko help Titia and Risha prepare a meal. Together they make burgers and plan to eat outside, only to discover that it is raining. Even so, Chifrey brings everyone outdoors and creates a barrier that keeps the rain from touching them. As the rain finally clears, bright clouds fill the sky. Excited by the beautiful view, Koko rushes back to the Atelier to find Agathe. Instead, she runs into Chifrey's friend, Olrugio. The moment Olrugio learns that Koko came into contact with forbidden magic, he insists on taking her to Knight Morales immediately. However, Chifrey stops him and suggests they go inside first, so he can explain everything. Chifrey introduces Olrugio as the watchful eye assigned to their atelier. He explains that unlike places such as Calhoun and the Great Hall, smaller rural ateliers often become isolated. To prevent them from hiding problems, a witch known as the Watchful Eye is assigned to observe and report any serious incidents. Chifrey also tells Koko about the Knight Morales, the witch is responsible for protecting magic itself. According to the laws established after the pact, anyone who uses forbidden magic or learns its secrets must have their memories erased. The rules are absolute, with no room for exceptions. That means Koko's memories, along with Chifrey's own, could be erased as well. Despite understanding the situation, Olrugio insists that he still has to report everything to the Great Hall, because it is his duty as the Watchful Eye. Wanting to reassure Koko, Chifrey reveals that she has already passed the test and officially become his apprentice. However, their conversation is interrupted when a man arrives asking for Chifrey's help. His son is stranded inside a carriage after a broken bridge causes an accident. Before Chifrey can respond, Agathe suddenly asks to come along, insisting that she can be useful too. Chifrey hesitates to bring Agathe along, worried about her safety. However, Agathe refuses to back down and insists that she can help. Seeing her determination, Olrugio offers to take her ahead while Chifrey prepares the supplies they might need. Agathe and Olrugio soon arrive at the broken bridge, where they find a carriage on the verge of being swept away by the raging floodwaters. Olrugio instructs Agathe to use her rings to dry the soaked survivors, but she complains that there must be something more important for her to do. Hearing this, Olrugio remarks that he finally understands why Chifrey is so concerned about her. In his eyes, Agathe is simply too impatient. Chifrey soon arrives at the scene and draws a magical sword known as Raincleaver. Activating the casting seals engraved across its blade, he swings the weapon and parts the rushing river, creating a safe path to the stranded carriage. Olrugio immediately takes advantage of the opening and rescues the trapped boy. Meanwhile, Chifrey's students admire the incredible sword. Chifrey explains that Raincleaver is covered in casting seals and possesses enough power to carve a path through even the ocean itself. To ensure no one else is in danger, Chifrey asks Titia to inspect the downriver area with him, while Olrugio takes Risha to search upstream. That leaves Koko and Agathe to tend to the injured villagers. However, the rescued boy suddenly runs back toward the riverbank to retrieve something he left behind. As he reaches the edge, the tree branch supporting him gives way, leaving him trapped beneath debris. At the same time, Koko nearly gets swept away by the powerful current. Agathe initially believes this is finally her chance to prove herself, but she quickly realizes she cannot openly use her casting tools in front of ordinary people. Thinking quickly, she hides her hands beneath her cloak and relies on muscle memory to draw a spell. Moments later, she conjures a bird of light to distract the crowd and create an opening for Koko to rescue the boy. The The boy's father, however, confronts Agat and demands to know how her spell can possibly save his son. Losing patience, he prepares to jump into the river himself. Just then, Koko and the boy suddenly rise into the air and safely float back to the cliff. The boy is finally reunited with his father. Koko explains that she used the same spell which she used in her test before. Watching the reunion fills her with hope that she will one day be able to save her own mother as well. But before the girls can celebrate, silver-white capture pennants suddenly bind both Koko and Agat. Agat immediately recognizes the attackers as the Knight Moralis. The knights demand to know who cast the spell and ask whether the girls are working with the brimmed caps. As Koko looks around, she realizes something is terribly wrong. The rocks and riverbed have transformed into sand, and the river itself has turned into vapor. None of it is something she remembers doing. Seeing the destruction, a member of the Knight Moralis concludes that Koko could never have created such large-scale magic without resorting to a forbidden spell. Believing she has violated the taboo, the knight prepares to erase Koko's memories as punishment. Tetia and Riche rescue Koko just as the leader is about to erase her memories. Chifri arrives and warns Aesthis not to lay a hand on his students. At the same time, Olrugio tells Knight Moralis to focus on the injured instead of arguing, and Moralis agrees. However, Aesthis states that the investigation will continue once everything is settled, and he keeps a close eye on Koko. Afterward, Aesthis asks Koko to recreate the spell. Although she manages to cast it, the result is far too weak to match the large-scale magic used earlier. Suspecting the involvement of the brimmed caps, he examines her hands for hidden seals, but only finds calluses and ink stains. In the end, he leaves to report the incident and warns that if Kifre's Atelier is found responsible, he will show no mercy. Meanwhile, Kifre explains to Koko and Agat that exposing magic to ordinary people is extremely dangerous because witnesses would have their memories erased. Since memories make up a person's entire life, he tells them to be more careful, and both girls accept his warning. Believing Agat has earned his trust, Chifre also allows her to take the second test, which would let her accompany him on future jobs. Elsewhere, Aesthis concludes that Koko is a threat that must be dealt with before it is too late. Meanwhile, Olrugio uses magic to create a bridge that allows the river to flow normally again. As for Kifre, he retrieves Koko's hat and ink. Noticing that the ink has not decreased at all, he immediately senses that something is wrong. Kifre then asks Olrugio to take the girls back to the Atelier. Since Koko still has not received her pen, and Calhoun is nearby, he decides to stop there first. They arrive in Calhoun and meet Noah, who is still investigating the mysterious seals. Despite trying to separate the magic dyes, he admits that the colors are blended together too perfectly. When Chifre shows him Koko's vial, Noah notices that its color closely matches the seals. Before Noah can stop him, Chifre uses the ink to draw a seal himself. At the same time, a bright flash of light disrupts the magic dyes stored on the shelves, leaving Tarda confused because he cannot distinguish the colors. Due to his silver wash eyes, he sees the entire world in silver, making it impossible for him to become a witch no matter how hard he studies. Meanwhile, Kifre realizes that the ink itself is connected to the brimmed caps. Horrified by the discovery, Noah wants to inform the Great Hall and Knight Moralis, believing the situation has become too dangerous. However, Chifre forbids him from doing so. Later, Koko asks Kifre about silverwash. He explains that it is a congenital eye condition that causes people to see everything in shades of silver. Since witches place great importance on eyesight, those born with the condition often have a difficult life. Even so, Kifre reassures Koko that as long as she remains in his atelier, he will protect her. Later on, Noah organizes the magic dyes when Tarda asks about the strange flash of light from earlier. To his surprise, Noah has no memory of it at all. Meanwhile, Tarta finds it strange that his grandfather has no memory of the mysterious flash of light and begins to wonder if Kifre has something to do with it. Later, Kifre gathers his students and explains the 5 tests that witches must overcome. The first is the consent of the crown, followed by the sincerity of the shield, the query of the qui vive, the goodwill of her grace, and finally the words of the wise. Together, they form the pentagon of proving, and each stage grants witches greater freedom in using magic. Passing the 4th test allows one to become a full-fledged witch, while the 3rd test grants access to the Tower of Tomes. The final test involves taking apprentices, something they do not need to worry about until after graduation. However, Richa dislikes tests and prefers living freely, while Agat has the opposite mindset and dreams of becoming a librarian in the Tower of Tomes. Tetia reveals that Agat's family descends from one of the apprentices of the 3 wise ones, with every generation producing librarians. Later that night, Koko wakes up from a nightmare and decides to practice drawing. At the same time, Kifri secretly attempts to analyze the mysterious ink without alerting the brimmed caps. However, the vial suddenly erupts into a violent whirlpool filled with lightning, leaving him unable to cast magic and destroying his only lead to tracking them down. The following morning, Kifri is still numb from the lightning and is so distracted that he accidentally breaks the teapot, claiming that he is going to gather tea leaves. He leaves the atelier, although Titia notices that he is acting strangely. Later, Koko returns Agate's sylph shoes after drawing the casting seals on them. Confused by her actions, Agate asks why she is helping despite being forced into taking the first test. Koko admits that she was frightened at first, but in the end, joining the test was her own decision. However, she suddenly collapses and falls asleep on the spot. Alarmed, Agate rushes to inform Kifri, who immediately takes Koko to Callan. There he runs into Tarta, who guides him to a hospital, earning Kifri's gratitude. However, Tarta reveals that there is something he wishes to ask him. Outside the hospital, Tarta remembers the question he wants to ask Kifri, but he becomes intimidated and struggles to speak. After gathering his courage, he finally tells Kifri that he has something to ask, and Kifri anxiously agrees to hear him out. However, the doctor arrives and calls for Kifri, forcing both of them to head inside to check on Koko. Inside, the doctor informs Kifri that Koko must remain in the hospital for further observation. She also warns him that Koko has been pushing herself too hard and implies that her current condition is partly due to that. After delivering her advice, the doctor leaves. As Tarta prepares to leave, Kifri remembers that he still has a question to answer. However, Tarta tells him not to worry about it anymore and quietly departs. Meanwhile, Kifri blames himself for Koko's condition and decides to use magic to ease her recovery, even though it cannot truly heal her. At that moment, a man rushes in searching for the doctor and notices Kifri using water magic. Realizing that he is a witch, the man begs him for help, explaining that a nearby fire is endangering lives. But with Koko still bedridden, Kifri initially refuses, which angers the man. However, Koko wakes up and tells her master to go because saving lives is part of a witch's duty. In the end, Kifri agrees and heads to the scene. Once he leaves, Koko realizes that she is terrified of being alone, but chooses to endure it. Meanwhile, Tarta remembers that he left his hat behind and returns to the hospital. Seeing Koko's condition, he decides to help by finding a medicinal potion. However, the bottles are unlabeled, making it impossible for him to identify the correct one. After narrowing it down to 3 possibilities, he becomes frustrated over not knowing which one to choose. At that moment, Koko sits up and attempts to draw a spell that can identify the proper medicine. However, her drawing becomes unbalanced, causing her to give up. Since Tarta understands balance, he helps complete the spell and together they determine the potion they need. Unfortunately, the medicine is not among the bottles nearby, so Tarta searches the rest of the hospital for it. Before he can return, the doctor arrives and begins treating Koko herself. Surprised, Tarta is warned to be more careful so he does not accidentally give the wrong medicine to his friend. She also explains why the potions are intentionally left unlabeled. Noticing his interest in medicine, the doctor even offers to teach him. However, when she spots the hat in his hand, she realizes that he is studying to become a witch and decides not to press the matter further. Elsewhere, Kifri finishes extinguishing the fire and rescuing the injured. After leaving the remaining work to another witch, he immediately returns to the hospital. To his surprise, he finds Tarta asleep beside Koko. Seeing the 2 exhausted children, he quietly covers them with blankets to keep them warm. The next morning, Koko happily announces that she has recovered and thanks Tarta for helping her. However, Tarta insists that she is the one who helped him instead. Eventually, Tarta leaves alongside his grandfather and promises to make a pen for Koko, which he will send to her through magic. The 2 friends bid each other farewell before parting ways. Even Tarta's grandfather is surprised to see how close Tarta and Koko have become. After returning home, Kifri spends time teaching Koko the things she needs to understand while drawing magic, explaining how important it is for her to perfect her drawings so that her spells can function properly. Meanwhile, Riche is also nearby, focusing on her own work. Eventually, Koko succeeds in drawing a particular spell and becomes so excited that she immediately wants to show it to Riche. However, Riche rejects her and explains that she does not look at other people's spells and prefers to practice on her own. Even so, Koko continues playfully and approaches her while showing her book. But instead, Riche suddenly becomes angry and casts a spell. Seeing her reaction, Kifri quickly rushes over to check if she is alright, but Riche immediately pulls her hand away from him before angrily standing up and leaving. Feeling saddened by what happened, Koko follows after her right away. However, just then, Olrugio, who has been hiding under a blanket, suddenly emerges and remarks that anyone who refuses to listen to their master will never grow properly. His sudden appearance leaves Kifri completely surprised. Meanwhile, Koko enters the room where she saw Richa disappear, only to become confused when she does not find her there. Instead, she only finds Brush Buddy and asks if she knows where Richa went. In response, the creature nods and immediately jumps into a clay pot sitting on the table. Confused by what is happening, Koko eventually follows and unexpectedly finds herself inside a cozy hidden passageway, where she finally reunites with Richa. Surprised by the place, Koko learns that Richa is the one who created the spell. Fascinated by everything around her, she spends some time admiring the many spells inside, and Richa casually tells her that she can have them if she wants, since she already has plenty of them herself. This makes Koko happy and allows her to relax a little, which gives her the courage to ask Richa why she refused to look at her spell earlier. In response, Richa explains that it was never because of Koko. Rather, she avoids looking at other people's spells because she knows that once she sees them, she would want to draw them herself. Since she does not want to copy someone else's work, she chooses to focus entirely on creating magic that reflects her own style. Later on, Kifri informs Agate that she has earned the privilege of taking another test, which is scheduled to take place 3 days later. When the day finally arrives, Kifri gathers everyone together and begins addressing his students. At that moment, Master Kukro also appears and introduces his apprentice, Uini, who has already failed the test twice. However, everyone is suddenly shocked when they see a big Brush Buddy transform into Master Alara. Soon afterward, Kifri suggests that Richa should participate in the test as well. However, Richa immediately refuses and almost loses her trust in him because of the suggestion, insisting that she wants to continue doing things her own way. But Kifri explains that it is precisely because of her goals that he wants her to take part in the exam. In response, Richa agrees on one condition. If she participates, then she will do whatever she wants during the test. Kifri accepts her terms without hesitation. Even so, Richa warns him that if she ends up taking the test, then she might never trust him again. With that matter settled, the group finally begins their journey to the venue, as the migration has already started, and Kifri reveals the hidden passageway they will use to get there. Meanwhile, Koko stays behind with Kifri while the others leave alongside Brush Buddy. As they remain outside, Koko suddenly senses the presence of a witch nearby and asks Kifri if someone is around. However, he replies that there is no one there since Master Kukro has already departed. Still feeling something strange, Koko walks to the edge of the cliff to investigate, but she fails to find anything, unaware that someone is actually hiding below. Meanwhile, the students taking the test arrive at a section inside the cave where the path has been broken, forcing them to rely on their magic to reach the other side. Richa goes first and successfully uses her magic to safely transport herself across. Agate follows by creating a staircase with her spell. Although her magic is imperfect and the stairs begin to collapse, she manages to grab the edge of the other side, allowing Richa to help pull her up. Now, only Uini remains. However, he suddenly becomes frightened and admits that he cannot draw spells or cast magic properly. His confession shocks everyone, leaving them wondering why he is even participating in the test. Eventually, they ask for an explanation, and Uini reveals that whenever people watch him, his hands begin to tremble, preventing him from drawing anything. Despite this, the others try to calm him down, with Richa personally encouraging him and assuring him that he can do it. Even then, Uini remains scared and confused. After thinking for a while, he comes up with the idea of covering his face with his clothes so that he can focus. However, while doing so, he starts worrying that the others might be laughing at him or making fun of him. Unable to bear the thought, he checks everyone's expressions and is surprised to see that no one is mocking him. Instead, everyone is paying close attention to what he is about to do. Realizing this, Uini finally decides to focus completely. Using his clothes as a medium to reflect what he wants to draw, he begins tracing his spell. Moments later, a powerful wind suddenly starts blowing throughout the area. Master Alara attempts to suppress it, but Uini quickly explains that the phenomenon is actually his own handiwork and that this is the nature of his magic. This revelation shocks everyone. Immediately afterward, his clothes transform into a different form, and Uini explains that wearing them makes him feel as though he is alone, allowing him to concentrate better. With his newfound confidence, he successfully creates a means of transportation and safely reaches the other side. After arriving, Uini thanks Richa for encouraging him, while Richa praises his incredible magic and tells him that he should never think of himself as worthless again. However, Uini admits that those feelings will probably remain, but he hopes that things will gradually improve from now on. Meanwhile, Agate asks Richa why she took such an interest in Uini despite normally keeping her distance from others. In response, Riche says that Uini helped them, so she is simply returning the favor. Later, Master Alara gathers everyone on the other side of the route and prepares to address them. However, before she can do so, she is suddenly attacked by the brimmed caps and quickly finds herself overwhelmed. Before disappearing, she warns the students not to listen to anything the brimmed caps tell them and orders them to keep moving forward. Moments later, she suddenly vanishes right before their eyes. A gigantic golem suddenly attacks Kifri's group, forcing him to shield Tatia and Koko as they fall into a massive underground abyss. Realizing that the brimmed caps are likely behind the attack, Kifri tries to protect his students during the fall, but a rock shard strikes his back, causing him to lose his balance as they descend even deeper. Meanwhile, Agat's group runs through the cave after realizing that the attackers are most likely brimmed caps as well. They quickly hide in the darkness, but one of the brimmed caps soon finds them. Uini is suddenly caught in a powerful suction force and begins getting dragged toward the enemy. Fortunately, Riche immediately casts a mist spell and manages to save him. Without wasting any time, the group continues running until they reach a dead end, where they must rely on magic to cross to the other side. Agat then uses her spell to safely transport everyone across. During this, Riche realizes that they need more spells to deal with the situation, but she only knows the ones she has already mastered. Surprisingly, Uini offers his own spells for her to use, and is genuinely happy that he can help in some way. At the same time, Agat keeps wondering what the brimmed caps are really after. Then she remembers what Tetia mentions earlier, and finally realizes that they are not the true target. Immediately, Agat stops and announces to the attackers that what they seek is not with them. Recalling how Knight Morales takes flight, she explains that Morales has already had her memories erased and has been returned to the village. Therefore, she believes there is no reason for the brimmed caps to continue pursuing them. However, Agat ends up getting captured instead, as the enemies imprint their seal on her while trying to convince her that the brimmed caps are superior to the pointed caps. Thankfully, Richa reacts in time. As the enemy releases Agat, Riche quickly sends out a rope for her to grab onto, allowing Agat to safely return to her side. After discussing the situation, the two decide that they should report everything back to their master. However, when they call for Uini, they suddenly realize that he is nowhere to be found. Instead, he has already been captured by the attackers. Even worse, they transform him into a scalework fur. Horrified, Riche and Agat demand that the brimmed caps return him to normal. But the enemy simply tells them that if they truly wish to save him, they should become their guests instead. Unable to bear losing a friend, Riche decides to sacrifice herself for Uini's sake. However, Agat chooses to go in her place. She orders Riche to return the Murphons to their flock and make sure their master learns about everything that happens inside the cave. Before Riche can object, Agat has already gone with the brimmed caps. Elsewhere, it is Brush Buddy who wakes Koko up and makes her realize just how badly their master is hurt. Even so, Kifri warns her not to speak loudly, explaining that enemies are still nearby. Moments later, strange living gold decorations appear and begin accusing witches of turning them into such forms. Kifri then explains to Koko that these beings are actually the former residents of Romanon, proving just how deeply they resent witches. Knowing the danger they pose, he declares that he will face them himself and orders his students to remain close to him, as protecting them is a responsibility he intends to fulfill. Thanks for watching. Check out this next video, and remember to subscribe and Zap.